Now we're going to be covering the big one. To explain how important this is, this alone can massively improve the quality of an animation, and is a general thing that can apply to anything. Games, movies, etc. Arguably one of the most important things we've talked about in this chapter, along with physics. Simply put, have you ever felt when an animation dragged? Do things last too long, or are they too short? Are there dull periods in the animation that you skip when you rewatch it? Do those slow periods have enough build up to them to make them worth the payoff? Do they break up the flow of the animation? Do scenes cut off too soon, making it feel chopped up? That's pacing. Just like making sure the viewer is able to see what you want them to see with camera work, having the viewer actually keep watching the animation you made is also important. Viewer retention. Whenever you do go over your animation, try to lower the dull moments. We understand working on fights or action set pieces can be exhausting, but you shouldn't tank out after 5 to 10 seconds of fighting is done to have the characters stand and talk, or charge up a big finish that is ultimately less interesting than the combat preceding it. It is far more rewarding if you take a break and go back to working on that fight so it maintains that flow of action rather than breaking it up. It's like blowing up a balloon and calling it quits before it can really take off. That's deflating to watch. And whenever someone decides to rewatch the animation, they may find themselves skipping over those parts to watch the interesting bits. A habit that can ruin pacing is music sync. Particularly, people like to sync to the beat drop of a song, but until that beat drop happens, it's usually characters standing around for what feels like minutes, but it's probably only 10 seconds. But that's what bad pacing can do. Also, try to avoid sections where you feel pacing may be affected. For example, instead of having a character stopping to talk, they could talk while the action is going, which could possibly enhance the action. Here's a clip from a VOD review we did when we covered this.
Now, like we've mentioned before, we really like the attempted storytelling. This scrolling section, really frickin' nice, dude. Good job. However, for bits of dialogue like at 29 seconds and 48 seconds, they just walk and break the pacing of the action. Instead of breaking down the animation into chunks of action, dialogue, the pace would be kept and also make the fight a little more interesting if you had some action or motions while they're talking. In fact, you did a good job of it here at around 42 seconds, but only for that one instance, which is a shame. Check out this side-by-side comparison to see how pacing is uninterrupted when the text is going on at the same time.
But the opposite can be true. Having frantic pacing can be exhausting and can make the animation seem homogenized. It's good to break up that balance and make sure things aren't too fast for the viewer to barely have any time to register what happened. We're not saying that there can't be places to stop and talk. There absolutely can. What we are saying is that you need to find that balance. Having 5 seconds of combat for a 20-second talk scene in a 30-second animation isn't good pacing if what you're selling is a fight animation. We'll play an example of good and bad pacing. The first clip has the action spaced out, and the things in between them barely have anything of worthwhile content, whereas the latter breaks up the action in interesting ways while keeping it animated. Pacing can drastically improve your work. It's a major improvement should you have effective pacing.